So welcome to another edition of Open for Business. And amidst this COVID-19 crisis, I reached out to Bill Lucas. He is the expert in healthcare insurance in our Savannah community. And I have a lot of questions, and a lot of small businesses have a lot of questions on what's going on. What is the government doing to help us with our co-pays, help us with our deductibles? What advice do you have? What are the top things that you can say? Because I know you follow closely everything that's going on with this bill.
Right. So they've got quite a few different things that they've passed. The first thing that they passed was basically, what are you going to do with people who have to go home because their children are sick? I mean, not sick, or their children are out of school.
Right.
Or what are they going to do if they're sick, or if they have to go home and take care of someone sick? So the sick leave policy was basically signed into law the day after St. Patrick's Day.
And what does that say specifically?
In simple terms, it's basically saying that if you have someone who's having to go home because the school is closed, then you have to keep paying those employees, in some cases for up to 12 weeks. Then you're allowed to basically apply for a grant to be reimbursed for that.
Excellent. You see, I love how you put it in plain language. Thank you for translating that.
All right. So then in the same situation, if I've got a small company and I've got, say, 17 employees and 16 of them have to leave, I might not be able to fund that particular situation. Maybe I can't borrow the money fast enough. So then I could apply and try to get it to where I only have to do that for 2 weeks.
So
if I have less than 50 employees.
So how hard is it to apply? Have you looked at the application?
No, these are all the things that they're writing the rules for now. That's the hard part. That, we can apply for these things, we can go for these things, but they're not quite ready. They believe that some of these will be ready by the end of this week. So
when do you think the check will be sent out and in our mailboxes? I mean, it's really not enough to cover some of these huge deductibles that business owners need to pay. But
there's three different types of things that we have to think about. One is the unemployment, where basically I'm a person and I become unemployed, and theoretically I'm making a good living of $50,000 a year. And then when I apply for unemployment, it says you're going to get $320, and I'm like, how the heck am I going to live off $320? And they've built into some of these new bills a subsidy to basically raise the income of that person. So there's one way.
Okay.
Another way is the employer forking out money. And there's a couple of ways to do this. So in simple terms, I've got 10 people on payroll, let's just say. Mm-hmm. And I've got one that has to go home because their child is at home and they have to stay home with the child because the school is closed or the daycare. I could take the withholding taxes of those 9 people and use that withholding tax to pay that 10th person. So really no money out of my pocket. I'm borrowing the tax money, the withholding tax money to do it, which works fine when I have a bunch of people and 1 or 2 are going. It doesn't work if it's reversed. And I have 17 going and only 1 working. I can't get enough payroll taxes out of 1 person to pay the other 17.
Brilliant. Yeah, it does.
So then that's number 2. Number 3 would be, what they just passed recently. They finally signed into law, which is basically the CARES Act, which is the Corona Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, is really what it amounts to. Now, in that simple situation, we're just going to use simple math. Let's just pretend that I have people and my payroll is $20,000 a month. Okay? I can borrow 2.5 times that, or $50,000.
Okay.
Right? I would probably want to use my banker. If I don't have a banker, then maybe I would look at something else. I wouldn't really want to pay anybody to help me fill this paperwork out. I want to pay some fee to some person probably to do this. But I want to basically go to my banker or somebody that I can trust. Mm-hmm. And I would want to include my CPA and my banker, because what I'm doing is I'm borrowing 2.5 times my monthly normal payroll, plus I'm allowed to count my rent or my mortgage payment on my business. Plus, I'm allowed to count all of my employee benefits that I spend, and I'm allowed to have this money, okay? Then the interest on this money is 4%, and then sometime in the future, and I'm going to use simple terms again, if I don't reduce the number of employees I have by a drastic amount, in other words, I keep everybody working, I then get it washed that I don't have to pay this money back. So let's go through that again. I have a $20,000 a month payroll. I'm allowed to borrow $50,000 for the payroll. I'm allowed to borrow, let's just say, $3,000 for the rent. Simple math. I'm at 53. Another $3,000 of employee benefits. I'm at 56. I kept everybody working. I paid everybody's normal salaries.
Wow.
And I got to use this money to do that. And I don't have to do anything to pay it back except pay the interest on the money.
Do you know what the interest is?
4%. And from what I understand, it's not going to be 1099 to me as a gift afterwards. So it could be really a gift. So I have a lot of employers who are going to apply for this money, and then maybe you hold it until they get the rules all written out, because nobody knows exactly what the rules are. So that's a scary. Why would I borrow money if I didn't know what the rules are? And I'm not sure if you would look at it that way, or if you would look at it, why would I spend it until I knew what the rules
Just hold it.
were? Or maybe I have it as a cushion just in case.
Right, because we don't know.
Like that. And so, a lot of people will be looking at this, deciding. I've had customers call me and say, well, I'm not sure that I'm going to need it. And I'm like, well, if we just said 30 days ago, who's going to need any help? Most people would have said, no, I'm still going to the restaurants I love.
Right.
And then you added a week here, a week here, a week here. Now none of us are going to the restaurants practically. If we are, we're pulling outside and they're bringing the food to the car or whatever. So life is changing as we know it. And so these are some of the precautions and some of the, I consider them gifts at this particular point that might be there to help people.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other tips that you would like to share?
Insurance companies don't know what they're doing at this particular point. I was dealing with an insurance company today on a group that has a renewal, and I'm saying, hey guys, we need the renewal to be 0. And they were like, well, we can't do that. And I was extremely upset, and I've been going back and forth. And a while back, I came up with an idea that nobody should get a rate increase for May, and nobody should get a rate increase for June, because if I can't meet with the employer, how am I going to then meet with the employees? So hypothetically, if your group insurance for you personally went up $200 a month, let's just say $100. How much of that is the employer going to pay? How much of that is you're going to pay? How do I explain that to you? And if I had to move the deductible up or the copay up in the middle of this because the cost was so exorbitant that I had to figure some way to reduce cost, it's just 2 or 3 negatives on top. And I can't quite shake the insurance companies to get them to listen, because only 3% of health insurance plans are renewing in May and June approximately. So it's not like 50% of their business is renewing now. That's basically December and January. So I don't quite know what they're doing. A lot of the ancillary, we call this is the group life, the group dental, the group disability, those type of benefits. A lot of them are coming out saying there's no rate increase for 5/1 all the way through August. They're saying, are you kidding? We're not going to do this to our employees, our employers, our partners. Health insurance companies have not quite said that yet. It hasn't quite hit them, or they're going to stick with their guns. I'm not exactly sure, but we're pushing really hard on our side to make them not have an increase.
It's like most businesses are trying to make accommodations. I know the president mentioned that some of the insurance companies are getting rid of the copays. I mean, have you heard anything about deductibles?
So what they're getting rid of the copays and stuff for, this is where I go in for treatment of the coronavirus. But let's face it, most of us are not going to go in for treatment. We're going to go in thinking we're sick. We're going to go in and have an emergency room visit, and we're going to have a test, and we're going to have some prescriptions. But most people are not going to be diagnosed with this.
Right.
It's going to be everything else. And so we're all going to have copays and deductibles and co-insurances based on our plans, or if we have high deductible health plans, we're going to have out-of-pocket costs. A lot of them are working on covering everything with no copay, or covering things immediately for the coronavirus itself. But again, most of us are not going to be the people who are hit with this. It's going to be still a rarity, even though it's extremely severe. But the person who hits it, the people who thought they had it could have almost as much of an expense as the people who did have it. And they're not going to have anything cheaper.
So Bill, how much is the test? And I'm assuming that the insurance companies cover it. And how about if you're not insured, how much is it? Do you know?
I have no idea, but I do know of a person here in Savannah who was sick for over a week and could not get in to be tested, and then finally got in to be tested, and then finally they are now tested positive and they are now at the hospital. And of course, they had family members and stuff around, during the time that they, didn't know. And of course, as soon as they felt sick, I'm sure they, self-quarantined, but by then, you're getting everybody who you saw prior. And so it's not the easiest thing to do. And so also there's some insurance companies, if I can't afford to pay my health insurance bill, do I have to pay it? And the answer is theoretically no, but yes. So how do you do both? If you can't pay your group health insurance bill, you need to call the Blue Cross, United Healthcare, or whoever and say, I'm having a problem.
Good advice. The
governor has signed in a thing saying they need to be more lenient.
Okay.
And all of them are trying to be more lenient. But here's lenient to some versus lenient to others. Lenient to some means no problem. You didn't pay April. Come June, no problem. You still have insurance. We haven't canceled you yet. But I'm not paying for that prescription that you're going to go to CVS or some drugstore to get filled until you're current with your premium. So I could cut off your coverage. Now, as soon as you pay it, then I could go back and reprocess that. That could be some. Some might let you go into a grace period that does last 60 days or 90 days.
But you'll still have to make it up.
You'll still have to make it up, and you might have to make it up before they pay claims. And so it might not really have helped you. It legally didn't cancel, but as much as health insurance costs, and let's just use an average family in Savannah today, is probably $1,800 a month for family coverage. You're not subsidized by your employer or by the government. You get too far behind on that, and you might not ever be able to pay it back. So you have to be real careful there.
So Bill, what about the sole proprietor who's not part of a group, who might have like Ambetter? I mean, what advice do you have to the one person business, this true small business owner?
All right, so let's pretend I have Ambetter. Mm-hmm. And let's pretend I have a non-subsidized plan. In other words, I have a family of three, right, and I believe I was going to make $90,000 a year, and I'm paying the whole price of the $1,700 family rate. Let's just pretend that. I could go in now and say, you know what? I'm not going to make $90,000. With this, I might only make $50,000. So I could actually redo my paperwork and cut my subsidy on now, where the government will pay half my insurance premium.
So how low, what is that rate?
Well, let's just give an example. Let's just say that I believed I was a family of three and I'm a little older than most. So let's just pretend, I'm, pushing 60, and I've got a wife who's close to my age, and I've got a child who's an older teenager or college student. If I believe my family income would now be dropping to maybe $50,000, I might get a subsidy that covers 80% or more of my premium.
And how do you reapply? Do you do that now? Do you call you? Do you call Ambetter? And how would you do that?
Our office helps a couple of thousand people a year on these type of plans, the individual plans. And so you could call us, or you could go online through healthcare.gov and try to pull up your stuff and try to do it there. It might be where you're going to basically shrink your salary now while you're on unemployment or unemployed.
Do you have to file unemployment to shrink your salary?
No, I'm just using that as an example. If I was paid the normal unemployment, then of course I'm taking a lot less pay than I would normally. Right. But if I'm self-employed, that could be a problem. But there's a bunch of things out there. For example, in one of these bills I was reading, where let's say that I have an Airbnb, and golly, the day after St. Patrick's Day, everybody called and canceled March, and then after that, everybody called and canceled April, and everybody called
the rest of the year.
At least the next 3 months.
At least.
Where they can apply for grants to cover the loss in rental.
Is that the government?
That's the government. So all of these things have places where you can apply for different things. Now they're allowing, in some cases, subcontractors to apply for unemployment, which before subcontractors never could apply for unemployment. So they're opening these things.
Business? I mean, would the business Yeah.
So let's just say I was a self-employed person, maybe I could now have unemployment where before I could not. And then they're also putting together these, what I consider gifts, where they're paying the single people $1,200 and anybody with a child $500. So, a family could receive, $3,000, $4,000, depending on the number of children, a
That's
one-time.
a one-time
It's a
check.
one-time deal. But you could have that on top of your increased unemployment or on top of even your pay that you're still getting.
Yeah.
I've had lots of employers send people home and still, they unfortunately laid people off because they couldn't afford to do anything but lay them off. But they're paying their insurance premiums for them while they're gone. They're figuring, I'm saving a lot of money in payroll. I'll just make sure that my people at least didn't lose their insurance while they're gone.
Right.
Of course, some companies can't do that, but some companies are sending people home and paying the people. And they're asking, we're going to still pay you and we're going to take out your normal deductions out of your paycheck. So there's a lot of different things that people can do, and what they're really looking at.
Okay.
Also, one more thing, let's just say my boss let me go and I've got COBRA. Oh my gosh, have you seen COBRA? I can't afford COBRA. So because of that, they have the opportunity to go to the Affordable Care Act and buy an individual policy now, because this creates an open enrollment for them. Now, the disadvantage is if they move to a new plan, maybe the deductible starts over. And then when they go back to work, then the deductible starts over again. So they need to be educated and look at all of these things.
So how much would that be if they just started a plan and, they started in mid-year? So what would that be? What would that look like if you're under 50,000? How much would that deductible be?
Everybody's different. So I'll give you a couple of scenarios. Let's pretend that I was working at a restaurant and the restaurant provided me with the health insurance, which most restaurants don't, but some do.
Right.
So let's just say my health insurance plan was provided by my employer and my employer is no longer offering me health insurance and I was laid off.
Wow.
I could, and let's pretend that I believe now I'm single and I have no dependents on my tax return. And I believe that basically I'm going to end up making about $17,000 this year because of what happened.
Right.
Health insurance can not only be free, it could also have a $0 deductible and a $0 copay to see a doctor. So with over 20,000 pages of rules and regulations on the Affordable Care Act for the individual and group insurance policies, it's impossible for me to tell you what your price would be without an interview.
Right, right.
And so everybody's different. You might make too little money and get no subsidy and have to pay more than your COBRA premium.
Do they take into account your savings and value of your house and everything, or is it just what you're
doing? I could live at the landings, I could drive a Mercedes, I could own a business, I could own 2 businesses, and I could still get health insurance for free because my adjusted gross income is what it's based off of. Or
Gotcha.
I could be a single mom, get no help at all, make $25,000 a year, but have 3 kids on my income tax and not get a subsidy at all and can't afford to have health insurance. There are cliffs and sharp edges all the way around these things. It helps some people and it doesn't help some people. So it truly takes the interview process.
So Bill, I see you being very busy. If somebody does not want to go to the government site, how does that work with contacting you to help them navigate what to do?
Over the years, we've charged people different times, like when the insurance companies stopped paying us for the individuals. Now the insurance companies are paying us again for the individuals, so we're not charging on the individuals. Okay. Group insurance in Georgia can go down to 1 person. Think about that. Group insurance in Georgia can go down to 1 person. So if I take the individual policy offered in Chatham County, which there's 2, 95% of
Blue Cross?
No, it's Blue Cross. That's Ambetter and something care. It just came to my. I'll think of it as soon as. If you hadn't asked, I would have known it. But it's
that's fine.
Ambetter and Care Source, I think, is what it is. Mm-hmm. But 95% of the doctors don't take these plans.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pretend I have a child, and that child needs to be seen at NC Anderson, or that child needs to go to Mayo, or my spouse, unfortunately, has a doctor that they need to have. Group insurance has all those doctors that you can see everywhere. Individual plans do not. If I bought an individual plan in Georgia, think about this, and I went to see a doctor in Hilton Head, I couldn't do it. If I bought a plan in Hardyville in South Carolina, I could not come to Savannah to use it. If I was in Aiken, South Carolina, I couldn't come to the hospitals in Augusta. So think about that. North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, you buy an individual policy in those states, you cannot use those policies out of the state.
People do not know that, Bill.
Oh, no. And you know, people like Mayo will let you in and say, yes, we'll take all insurance plans and you will pay us whatever they don't. And so you don't really know that you're going to owe the $10,000 until after you walk out.
Oh, my heavens. There's so much that the small business owner doesn't know.
So going back, sometimes on the small groups, we charge them like an attorney or accountant. If I write, let's pretend it's your group and you've got 2 other employees and they're wonderful employees and you want to offer benefits and health insurance to them. And we use United Healthcare because golly, your doctor's in network with them. They pay me a total of $5 per employee, even though your premiums might be $700 a piece. I get $5. And they're doing that because they don't want me to write your group insurance because they know it's a loss. Okay. And so we put together packages where people can have small groups and they hire us like an accountant or an attorney. And we counsel you on what's out there and show you the 380 plans you can buy.
So you also mentioned that it can now be a group with 1. How does that work?
Group insurance in Georgia can go down to 1. So let's go for you. Let's pretend you were older. All right. So now you're covered under Medicare, but you've got this great employee and her name is Barbara. And Barbara's your only employee and she's under 65. So you could actually do group insurance just on Barbara.
Well, how about if I'm just 59 and it's just...
So a 1-person group on an owner is really, really hard.
Okay.
You have to be in the farming business to make that happen. And that's strange. Okay. So, which also could mean that you're in the restaurant business because they use farm stuff, or alcohol because those products are made from farmers, or the timber business. Some of those can go down to a 1-person sole proprietor group. They're rare. And again, a little complicated.
Right. So even if you're a subchapter S, you can do this?
Subchapter S is a viable group. Sole proprietors in some cases are a viable group. 1099s in some rare cases are good groups. And you can also do in some cases a management carve out. I've got 15 employees, but I only want to cover the top 3 salaried people. Those things are possible. No one's really telling you this because they don't pay a commission. So the agents are saying, oh my God, please don't call me. I'm going to lose money if you call me. And so the difference that we decided to do is we're going to tell you all about it and you can pay us like an attorney or an accountant and you decide.
Smart. I mean, gosh, to be able to go to somebody like you that has your knowledge and you can navigate us through all these landmines is invaluable.
Well, so somebody like you, we first start with the individual policies. Then we might look at the Christian plans or the religious-based plans. It's unbelievable, but over 500,000 people have those now. And then we've got the short-term disability policies. And then we've got the chamber plans, which are actually through a captive. Then you have the association plans. Then you have the limited, what I consider level funded plans, where I can have 30% cheaper if I'm healthy than the regular rates. And then you've got the regular Blue Cross, United Healthcare, Aetna, Humana, and all those.
Gosh, well, Bill, thank you so much for being on Open for Business. If somebody would like to call you, how do they get in touch with you?
So our website is BillLucasInsurance.com, and our telephone number is listed there, but our office is in Richmond Hill, even though we have customers in about 7 states. So wow. We're all over, and we have customers that if I named them, you would know them by name, hundreds of employers and thousands of individuals. But it's 912-756-6686, Bill Lucas Insurance.
Bill, you are the authority in healthcare, and I certainly appreciate you taking this time to explain it to me and to explain it to the small business community. So thank you for being on Open for Business.
Thanks for inviting me.